Hello everyone. How can game devs leverage Web3 SDKs when developing a game? As you know, SDKs provide a set of tools and resources that make it easier for developers to create and optimize games. Although, according to a survey uh, launched by Game7 last year, Game7 is one of the biggest community of game developers involved in Web3. Native in-game Web3 integration for popular game engine such as Unity and Unreal Engine is in dire need. A game engine that directly integrate with Web3 infrastructure via easy-to-use SDK is currently really needed. And in the Blockchain Game Alliance, we are very fortunate to count all those companies who are building these solutions for game developers. So it makes sense for us to have this conversation around SDKs and how could we help game developers to use it. So very, very pleased to welcome our speakers today. Obviously, the first question will be to give, in order to give some context about who you are, what you do, and introducing the company as well. I would like to ask you, each one of you, to introduce yourself. I'd say starting with you, Timothy, if you agree.
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to do it. Hey guys, Timothy here from Unix Gaming. I'm the head of marketing, and what we're doing at the moment is, I mean, it's a lot. It's the list as long as our arm, as my arm, and it's a pretty long arm. But yeah, I think in general, kind of everything we're doing has one end goal, which is simplifying Web3 to as much an extent as possible that it allows for mass adoption. Whether we do that through gaming, through technology, through um, various other things that we're currently working on, I think that's pretty much the goal. Is simple is better, and so whatever we can do to get there is pretty much the goal.
Awesome. Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to talk with you because Unix Gaming is really known as a guild, and I know it's evolving a lot through the infrastructure that you're building. So, looking forward to talking about that. Jonathan, welcome on the show. Could you introduce yourself and what you do at Mirrorworld?
Yeah, thank you very much. It's my pleasure. It's an honor to be here. So I'd like to thank the team over at BGA for organizing this and for all the panelists for being here. And also to everyone who's watching. My name is Jonathan. I'm the CTO at Admiral. And at Mirrorworld, we're building cross-platform SDKs and APIs for building mobile and web dApps on in a multi-chain context. And what we plan to do is to with our SDK, which we're actually already doing, is improving the onboarding process for new users who are maybe probably were not Web3 native, giving them a healthy compromise between user experience as well as security of their assets. And for developers, we are aiding the process of building on top of Web3, so you can focus more on building your games or your dApps. And that way you have a really nice API that's flexible, that's easy to use, easy to consume. And our goal is to make the process exciting. So yeah, I'm very excited to be here to discuss about gaming today. But yeah, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Jonathan. Yes, we're going to have the opportunity to explain the onboarding process because it's crucial when you talk about the SDKs you're building. Alessandro, very happy to have you today on our show. Could you introduce yourself and what you do at ChainSafe?
Sure thing. Thanks for having me and great to meet you all. My name's Alessandro or Alex. I'm a product manager at ChainSafe. And ChainSafe is a company that does research and development across all blockchain ecosystems that we can participate in. So we have a lot of open source node implementations, a lot of developer tools. And one of the main things we're focusing on recently in the last few years has been the gaming sector. And so I'm the product manager specifically for gaming solutions, of which we have Web3 Unity, which is kind of the baseline platform that's built directly in Unity that we offer with a lot of convenient tools for typical blockchain interactions, and then a set of consulting and studio focused services on top of that. So I just make sure all that comes together and that it actually solves people's needs and does what's needed to create awesome games.
the most exciting role at ChainSafe, for sure. So thanks, Alice, for being here. Tim, starting with you. As I said, being a guild first, why did you decide to build the infrastructure for game dev in order to bring blockchain into their game? Do you also plan to use your community of thousands of scholars to help games, or you want to focus on the infrastructure first?
I think the thing we've realized that, and I think this is something that I would say Epic Games kind of was championed, I guess, in talking about Web3 gaming. It's that the best thing you can do as a third party, not developing the games yourselves, is give them the room to grow and find the direction that like works for them. So that would mean that games are going to come out and they're going to evolve depending on who's playing them, why they're playing them, what their needs are. And to an extent, we feel like because Web3, at the end of the day, blockchain, anything that like touches on this like grand world of Web3 is complicated, maybe needlessly complicated, sometimes for a reason, because complicated can be more secure, but also it makes it steps a lot harder for users. I mean, if a game or to develop is a little bit more complicated to develop for a developer, it's not the end of the world. Tech always gets harder. Like every time there's a new Unreal Engine, for example, I mean, there's a reason that one of the main focuses is making the engine easier to use for developers because, like, you know, ray tracing is hard too, right? It's not like technology in the rest of the gaming world is getting easier. So developers are used to working harder, but gamers are not. Gamers are. I'm a gamer. Like if I wasn't on this stream right now, trust me, I'd be gaming. So when I say gamers can be fickle, I mean that in the nicest way. And introducing delays between action and reward is generally not a good thing. And unfortunately, with the way Web3 works at the moment, that's what happens. You know, for example, no one wants to wait around for wallet requests or network congestion. That's a nightmare. Anyway, let me circle back to the point. The thing that we believe is that what we can do is take away as much of the difficulty of Web3 as possible for developers so they can focus on getting the important things right. Because I know there's a lot that goes on to, you know, what decisions are made by developers, but certain things will make bigger differences than others. And the time for a user to start playing and having fun is a really important one. And sometimes that takes a lot of time to iterate and work on. And you can't really do that if half your team is constantly trying to figure out, okay, how do we make this blockchain stuff work again? Like it's complicated and expensive and you know, we want to get rid of that. And if we can, the best way we think we can do that is providing the support, technology, and the know-how to just go from A to C and skip the B step because, yeah, it's not always so easy. So it's kind of, I don't know if I answered the question. But...
Yeah, you do actually, and it will help me to ask the following question to Jonathan, because obviously what you're all saying is with the purpose of making it easy for game developers, focus on the game itself and not so much on the integration of blockchain, Web3, and everything around. So on that point, Jonathan, I wanted to ask you the question that obviously Web3 is adding different layers of complexity to game developers. So could you name one of those or many of those and explain how you are making life easier for game dev on your side? Oh, I think you mute, Jonathan.
Sorry, I was talking to myself there. Well, thank you. Yeah, at Mirrorworld, when we first started building on Web3, I think we're previously on Ethereum, and then we moved from Ethereum to Solana, and then we started building our games. And we very quickly ran into some of the issues. At first, there was very little, if not no, infrastructure on Solana at the time. But and the reason as to why we moved to Solana was because of the high TPS. What we didn't want was to have users sitting around waiting for 30 seconds for a transaction to settle. The other thing that we also encountered was like instead of like when you're working with like layer twos as well, because we did research them, we found that the long-term economics was not going to be fair for a small project that is like found at that productivity. So although it seemed like an easier developer experience, it wasn't really a long-term economic solution. We needed it to be as cheap as possible, which is why we went with Solana. And when we came to Solana, very quickly, our devs who were previously just game devs had to learn a few things about wallets. So we had to re-educate the whole gaming team about wallets, how to deal with seed phrases, make sure they're secure, don't just put them anywhere, how to sign transactions. We had to we could no longer just let them directly interact with the contract, so we had to write SDKs. I wrote numerous SDKs on top of the actual SDK with a simple declarative API. So you could just say, I want to list this NFT for this price on this marketplace, and those are the only parameters, so that it would actually make sense for them. So we encountered these kinds of issues. So I would say for developers, they end up having to learn about the complexities of the chain, like confirmation times, gas fees, how they have to learn how to use faucets all the time. Now with Mirrorworld, like as if you create a developer account, you literally creating a developer account. If you're a new developer, we'll airdrop you tokens. You can create NFT collections on the dashboard in like 30 seconds. You can mint NFTs into your collections in a very declarative API. So these are some of the problems that we wanted to solve, so that we don't spend so much time just dealing with a lot of nothing. The advantage that we also the other challenge that we also encountered for users was now for developers, they also have to educate their users of how now you have to learn how to use MetaMask, or you have to learn how to use Phantom. And this is, first of all, you have to download MetaMask. Most people don't download most like regular people don't download extensions. Now you have to educate them how to download extensions. Then there's a risk of the extension popping up on random web3 sites, and so there's a lot of risk and a lot of education that you have to do for your users to really feel comfortable with them. And there's so many pop-ups coming up every time you go to a site. You have to deal with this pop-up, and so the user experience is not really nice to deal with. So we also wanted to solve this problem, and also for games that exist both on the web and maybe say on mobile. We also wanted to make sure that we could unify this experience. So if I'm logging in, say from a game from browser into the DApp, I can still use my same credentials on mobile without having to download multiple apps or multiple clients to be able to do this. So these are some of the problems we set out to solve, just to take the pain out of all this process. Because if your users are finding it hard to log in, then you're not going to have a wonderful game. Also, if your team is spending a lot of time dealing with seed phrases and like this kind of nonsense and smart, and like having to keep track of private keys and whatnot, and having to keep track of like the smart contract changes, and they're deploying smart contracts, then you'll be spending a lot of time instead of actually making a really good game. I really think where Web3 is going, we're going to have to really publish some really high quality games, and I think that's what's going to drive the adoption for Web3 in the next 10 years. So yeah, especially in the gaming industry. So these are some of the challenges and some of the things that we had quickly identified, and what we're actively working to solve.
Awesome, very interesting. Alex, do you share the same challenges that you faced, and do you try to cover as well on your sides with ChainSafe?
And that was in terms of usability or kind of making things easier for folks?
Yes.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's tough, especially when you're a game developer who's new to some of these concepts. We try to make these things as obvious as possible, but I think one of the other approaches is just like making things as flexible as possible and offering as much documentation as possible to ease that onboarding experience for developers. So allowing people to plug and play the things that they are excited about or interested about, and giving them the documentation to know sort of the implications there, like getting them familiar with these processes and explaining what the implications of each of those features are is really important. But yeah, definitely the mirroring some of the things Jonathan's mentioned around educating people about security and those sorts of things. And all we can do as tool providers is to provide a template for the best way to do things, offer some tools to prevent folks from misusing things. But we are open source, and we do allow custom interaction. So at some level, if folks are willing to venture out there, then we allow them to, and we do that with what we're really grateful to have, which is a good community that can help support each other through adventuring through that stuff. So it's important to make sure that that's in place as folks sort of break through all the other bits. But certainly Unity offers a really awesome way to sort of segment this stuff in terms of prefabs. So for us, like, we have drag and drop prefab scenes for login that allow for any wallet to be used. We have one of the first, I'm pretty sure, drag and drop in-game marketplaces that allow people to access, sell, list, do anything with NFTs for themselves, and just makes it super simple. And we don't make any assumptions on any of these, right? Like, folks can just reskin them, change the logic however they see fit, or connect to external contracts if they wish. So we try to keep like an open approach, but allow for people who just want to get something going really fast, an easy drag and drop prefab for almost anything you might want to do, whether that's just checking ownership, putting a wallet in, or buying and selling NFTs.
Okay, so the process of creating NFT is obviously one of the biggest features that you could expect as a game developers who want to start developing a Web3 game. What level of customization are needed for game developers using an SDK for the creation of NFTs in terms of adding utility for their in-game assets? Alice, to continue with you.
Yeah, totally. So for us, it was really important that we give people kind of low-level access to as much stuff as possible to edit for their NFTs when they're creating them in-game. So we have a pretty full-featured minter that allows you to mint 721 or 1155 NFTs. We try to follow open metadata standards, so you can go in there and adjust attributes. You can adjust linked data and make sure that that's backed up by IPFS automatically through a service that we run called ChainSafe Storage. And as I mentioned, we have the marketplace that allows you to do any of that stuff that you might want to do. We're adding collections and royalties in the next few weeks. And I think one of the biggest things that we have is the ability to put in custom contract calls and to define custom blockchain RPC endpoints. And that basically for any EVM compatible chain, you can do it, all of these functions on any of those. And with a little bit of tweaking, you can even go to other chains, right? So we allow people to plug in NFTs that they've minted elsewhere and use all of our functionality, or we allow them to mint something in our SDK and then reach out to other marketplaces through custom contract calls to do it there, or for example, a lending or marketplace contract that they've created themselves. So that flexibility allows people to sort of take what we have that works really well and that takes into account common security practices, or allow them to go off script and really do what they want with their game.
Awesome. What Jonathan, actually the same question, what kind of customization you could expect in the process of creating NFTs with an SDK as a game developers, according to you?
Yeah, so I think the entire NFT stack, I think we discovered through, because we build games also. Some of our customers also built games. I think the process of minting NFTs, like Alessandro mentioned. Secondly, you also want to be able to verify collections. The third thing that you want to be able to do is to query NFT information, like, has this NFT been sold on a marketplace before? If it has been sold on a marketplace before, which marketplace was it? what was the price of that it was sold for, who sold it, this kind of information to kind of give the tokens a little bit of history. The other thing also we discovered that most projects also want to be able to have is like a storefront for their games. For example, if I'm playing within the game, I would want to be able to still be able to buy and sell NFTs without having to go to OpenSea or go to, take my users out of my mobile game to now go open Rarible or SoulSeed to transact with another UI, and because that will hurt my game's retention. With the Mirrorworld SDK, now you can spin up a marketplace, both at the protocol and the UI level. So that on the protocol, you create your own instance of the marketplace. It follows for EVM. It follows the the common standard used in EVM ecosystem, the Seaport standard that OpenSea uses, as well as auction house for Solana. So you can still sell your NFTs on a protocol that is observed open source. The other option that we also provide is being able to query the transaction history on your marketplace instance. And alongside the protocol, we also created a storefront. So you can spin up like a UI for your marketplace. You could design it how you want. You could put in as many collections that you want to list as you want, and you can also interact with it with a UI. If you're a game developer and you want to maybe set up your marketplace as like a vendor shop type thing, say for example in Unity or in Unreal Engine, you could make the experience interactive. I want to buy that thing, and the vendor picks it up, and when you pay for it, that actually goes through the user's wallet, and so it's a marketplace, but it looks different. So that kind of experience with interacting with your tokens is what we're trying to go for, that kind of flexibility. So I think minting NFTs, like has been mentioned before, batch minting, airdrops, being able to query their history on different marketplaces, as well as being able to trade them, spin up marketplaces, also create storefronts. You can deploy them on your own custom domain for your project, or and all this you can do with the Mirrorworld SDK.
Very interesting. Thanks a lot for that. I know that we often have the pleasure to have you, ChainSafe, Mirrorworld as well, during our demo day, when we see exactly what's happening when we, as a game developer, you want to develop your game using the SDK. And Willie would obviously you more than welcome to come for the next demo days to do the same. But switching a little bit around this open economy thing that we see around Web3, and a question for Tim, but actually for every one of you, developing Web3 game also mean opening the gates of your own economy for your games to a lot of different actors. Should a Web3 SDK help game companies to simulate, test, analyze various aspects of the game economy according to you, such as player behavior, in-game items? What do you think?
I guess I'll tackle one element that I think could be quite interesting, and then I'm happy to let the other guys discuss the other half. I think, and maybe this is a slightly different approach that we're taking, because I think it's clear that there's a lot of smart people working on these solutions, and there's a lot of really cool tech. I think it's every day that we talk to someone new who's developing something that's just like truly exceptional, and really the only difference between them and maybe another successful brand is they're struggling to get their name out there, or there's a lot of like congestion in the space. But technology is one thing. I think the first thing before you get to the point where this testing needs to happen, and where is actually what we would say is, and this is something we've been playing around with, this idea of like Web 2.5, where what we would encourage developers to do on their first time around is actually don't overcomplicate things. Take baby steps. There are any number of ways you can introduce like Web3 mechanisms into your games, and it doesn't have to be all or none. I think one of the traps that a lot of games are falling into is like they go, okay, cool, we want to be Web3, so we need NFTs and we need tokens. But actually do you really? Like, are those both independent? I mean, I guess NFTs are technically can be treated as tokens, but do you necessarily need both in your game, or are you just trying to encourage, say, trading, for example, and open trading? And so some of the the games we've been talking to, they start out very ambitious. They really want to take their game, up into the stratosphere, and then they realize that they need an economist, on the order of magnitude that like most countries don't have, which is why the economies are struggling, right? That they need to figure out how to make their game economy work. And what we're saying is, well, I mean, maybe let's start off with something a bit simpler. Maybe let's just use some very basic mechanisms to allow users to trade with one another in a more open economy, and use established tokens that are already available on the chain you're using, rather than using your own. And now I know that can sometimes be difficult because it's very easy to say, well, the reason we have a token is either we're using it to raise funds or we're using it to enable certain other utilities. But at the end of the day, for the user, the player, they're not going to use 90% of that utility. I can tell you now for sure, for the reason that a lot of people who play Dota, for example, don't use most of the stuff in the game. They literally play game, fight, end game, close game. Like that's their interaction with it. And so those are the key users you really need to focus on. And making things overly complicated, I think, actually is a trap that I think a lot of Web3 developers are falling into. So that's the one element. So now, of course, you if you do want to take the trading wheels off and you want to take to the next steps, you certainly do need to be able to test these things, because the thing is, you talked about introducing foreign actors or unknown actors, but actually the people you need to be worried about most are gamers, because gamers will game. Like that's literally the entire purpose of gaming, is to break things, actually, right? To get from start to finish as efficiently as possible. And when you introduce ways for people to get something out of it by doing increasingly less amount, like the least amount of work possible, get the most amount of reward or incentive. If you don't test those things, you can get in trouble quickly, because if gamers believe this is an earning mechanism or a way for them to gain something out of it, then very quickly you disincentivize return. So why would they put something in if they're trying to earn, right? Earning returns cut into cost to earn. So there's a lot of like nuance you get into it. So I'll let the guys talk about maybe I want to give everyone an opportunity to speak. But I think for me, the most important thing is biting off what you can chew. And certainly I think that's probably why the thing we're doing is, obviously we want to build the tech and make it as custom as possible. We at the moment, we're doing a lot of discovery calls. We're not just handing the keys to anyone. We make sure when we hand it to them, we explain exactly how the car moves and turns and accelerates and slows down, because the last thing we want to do is just like, here you go nuts. The one thing I will say is that at the end of the day, whatever tools you build, whatever customizability you had, whatever power you provide, if that doesn't come with the same level of like training or education, like if the manual, if the developer manual is thick and the training manual is thin, there's going to be problems. Like it's just going to happen. And so I think that's probably something just as important for us, is to focus on, okay, we're going to give you the tools to build your game, but we're also going to help you build it, because when your game succeeds, we succeed alongside. So yeah, I think that's quite important.
Yeah, got it. Jonathan, what do you think? Adding with the opportunity of adding liquidity into the game, the easiest the better. What do you think? Do you share the same feeling?
I think if we say for adding liquidity to test the game, I think I might need a little bit of help here to quite understand the context. Is it are we referring to tokens to be able to test the game? I just wanted to make sure I understand the problem.
Yeah, sure. Yes.
Okay. Personally, so the way I see it is, I feel that you want to make sure that as much as possible there is less friction for users when they're onboarding onto a new game. For example, most games do not make revenue for signing up new users. You'll probably be able to generate revenue or to actually have a playable game after your users have signed on and are doing something in the game. So maybe they win some kind of award, and they can now either choose to use the token to do something, and that's where the project maintainer can then be able to generate some revenue. For example, if you have a marketplace and you have a commission fee, then you'll be able to make some money. So I think at the first level, for users to be able to test the game, I think you want to make sure that there's as low a barrier of entry as possible. This is what I would advise. So because I mean the users just come in, you want them to be able to play the game and just test it to see that it actually works. From the developer's perspective, to be able to test out the way we've built our games at Mirrorworld is and for the games that we support, for example, recently been working with Rage Effect, and what we're able to do when we help them is our APIs support different tokens. So you can deploy a token, any token that you want on Solana, for example, or Ethereum, and you can still be able to customize the wallet UI to display those tokens. So I think as far as like the tokens, as for let's say liquidity for being able to use the game, we what we do is we have written a few guides to help the projects to see how to facilitate like the transfer of tokens from their wallets into maybe say the user's wallet, to see how to help them ideally with this. But what we haven't done is maybe limit what you can do or what tokens you can use, because we try to leave it open. The studio is kind of the creative authority here. What we can do is we can advise. So for example, Rage Effect recently came to us and said, hey, we want to be able to just take the transaction object and do something with it somewhere else. So we could work with them on that, and we created endpoints for them to be able to do that. Same thing for Magic Eden as well. They wanted something like this. So I think it's what I think for tools like SDKs, what I would prefer, because I use open source tools myself, I prefer to have a good idea of like what are the recommended patterns, but also the tool should not prevent me from doing what I want to do. For example, if I want to try and say create like a new marketplace and say list my NFT on multiple marketplaces, you can do that. You want to be able to be as flexible to do that, but also at the same time, you want to make sure that for your users there's as little friction as possible to to actually using your game or to using your dApp. There's something that the team just mentioned that I felt resonated with me a lot, which is most things probably don't need to be on the chain. So you may not actually need an SDK for some of those things, like a chain SDK, so to speak. Maybe another kind of like SDK you might need, but for most things you probably don't need to put them on the chain. If you want to record maybe basic information, usually most games have like a game server that stores this information. Not everything needs to be stored on the chain. So I would recommend only keep the critical information that you need on the chain. And if there's anything else for your users to be able to interact with the chain, keep the barrier of entry as low as possible. Maybe you shouldn't require users to have the token before they can even log in and play the game. But if that's the case, then maybe you should probably set up a mechanism to airdrop the tokens to to the new users that sign up. So we actually did this for one of our games. During our beta test, open beta test, we deployed a fake token, and when the user signs up, we have within our SDK we have a transfer tokens API. So we had a pool where we transferred to the new user who signs up a few tokens so they can be able to interact with it. So as much as possible for the user side, really keep the barrier of entry as low as possible. From the developer side, try not to complicate things. And yeah, if you need any custom support, I think you can always reach out to the teams that also build the tools. The reason why we're building these SDKs is to help you succeed at what you're doing. And if you have any ideas, please, you can always talk to the different teams. A lot of people are doing really amazing things, different ideas. It's still a very early stage for us as an industry, so ideas are pretty much the currency that by which we're operating. So at least those are my thoughts as far as this is concerned.
Actually, it was one of the questions I wanted to ask you about token distribution. So that's perfect that you answered that one. Thanks a lot. Alessandro, same question actually. Should a game dev expect some help around tokenizations when they're using SDK, according to you?
Yeah, I think it's super interesting, the idea of like a plugin simulation tool to model game economies. I think I would love to see that. And for us, I think the fact that we're kind of organized into modular prefabs and plugins, I think it'd be pretty sweet to see something like that built by our community. So yeah, if someone wants to build that, let us know. In the meantime, we're gifted in working in the industry of gaming, where folks play with new concepts and observe and tweak and do all those things. So I think one of the coolest things you can do is, as was mentioned by Jonathan earlier, kind of like do some off-chain prototyping and see how people interact within a game world with a token that's not actually built on chain. That's a very cool idea. And one of the things that's afforded by our SDK is the ability to operate on various EVM chains. So you can then move on to something like, XDAI or any other form of testnet and operate on kind of like a dummy token, just to see if folks understand the flow of taking those items that were purely managed through the game and adding a layer of complexity like wallet logins or self-custody or that sort of thing. And there you can see the usability aspects. But yeah, anything's possible. And again, going back to what I mentioned earlier pretty extensively, is just the ability to interact with custom contracts that folks can model these things and explore new economies. I mean, for myself, as a gamer and as someone who studied economics, like that's why I got into crypto, is the ability to create a lab where you can observe how people interact with each other differently by playing with these tools as a medium, like a substrate to see what emerges. And for me, I think that's one of the coolest things about gaming, is that it can be this opportunity to model new economies. And so I'm really stoked to see what people do for that.
I agree. I'm not as sticky as you are, of course, but I was so passionate when we had the opportunity to get Machinations showing the product and everything which is happening when you decide to launch a game with a specific economy. So I agree with you for sure. Staying with you, Alessandro, actually, let's talk about education, onboarding for game developers. What's your position? What's your let's say challenges, and how do you deal with the pain of onboarding game developers who doesn't know much about Web2 to use ChainSafe?
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, absolutely, yeah. So when folks are first coming onto Web3 Unity, obviously they can expect that we have pretty extensive documentation on all the methods and all that other stuff. One of the cool things that we've done, going back to the person who first started the project, Leon, had created a whole series of YouTube videos, not just...
Are we talking about the chicken?
Oh, no, the chicken is awesome. That's a recent development. Even before our chicken demo, which has been super, I play that and kind of get hypnotized by it. But earlier, Leon Doe, who was the kind of creator of Web3 Unity originally, before it was at ChainSafe, had created a series of YouTube videos kind of explaining step by step, talking about some of what you can expect to see as you're going through these things to notice. And we found that one of the biggest ways that folks learn about us is through those tutorial videos and YouTube videos, as well as Medium articles kind of going over, hey, we recognize you're trying to do this for your game. Here's a list of things that you can use from our SDK to kind of hack that together. So those sort of guidance and education pieces are really helpful. Obviously, like I said, the documentation and the kind of bare bones tutorial videos are useful. And then as I said, our Discord community is absolutely popping. I'm really grateful that our engineers and DevRel folks are willing to devote so much time there, but like constant support. And we're finally reaching that tipping point where other users can now help each other with realizing things that we never could have anticipated. We're like, we actually don't know how to do that, but someone else from the community has. They've hacked our thing and they've had success with X number of solutions. So community support's really helpful there. And the last thing that you mentioned, Flav, was the chicken demo that we created. So that was a fun thing that we, obviously we have game devs that are working on the team, and so we created a demo that's super funny. It's like almost like a Frogger type game where a chicken runs across the street. But importantly, it makes the methods really clear and they're labeled. So when you go and you experience something in game, you're like, oh, they're using that method to achieve this thing that I wouldn't have even thought twice about as a gamer, how that works. But then you can go back, reference the documentation, and you can even see the chicken demo is open source. You can see in there how that code for how that was created. And you can either copy paste that into your own game or just take inspiration from that. So I think it's really helpful to provide those practical examples in situ so folks can see exactly how it works and then reverse engineer it, which is what folks are going to do anyway.
Awesome. Jonathan, do you have the same strategy to educate and onboard?
Yeah, I think for education and onboarding, one of the things that we did for Mirrorworld is I created a tutorial series on how to do some of these things. So for example, with the JavaScript, with our SDK, we have multiple platforms. I'm a JavaScript engineer, so I made the JavaScript speedrun tutorial throughout the entire SDK. Also did a couple of live streams for some of our users who want to build, for example, a Solana Explorer. Some people wanted to build an NFT Explorer. So we built up using the Mirrorworld Smart SDK to be able to do that. We also have a couple of open source demos for, for example, how to create a new collection, how to mint NFTs into your collection perpetually, how to list them, create a marketplace and list the NFTs on the marketplace, all on the same UI. It's like a nice one-page thing. All you need is an API key, and you could you'll be able to do that. So yeah, I think especially like Alessandro said something I think is really helpful. I think documentation is the product, especially for developers, because if you don't, if however good your tool is or however amazing it is, if there's no way for developers to, or your users to discover what it is that you're able to do, then or that your tool is able to do, then you kind of put yourself at a disadvantage. And also your developers never get your users or developers never get to discover the amazing tool you're building. So I think it's always good for us to invest in documentation and in creating resources for consumers to take in and learn from. And yeah, I think as community as well is a really important thing. Some people have questions, being able to respond to them in Discord, providing this kind of support is really something that we can also take advantage of. And I think open source also is another really good strategy. We've had people who come in and say, hey, we notice there's a problem with this code. We think this is a change that we could make, and we look at it and we review it and we say, hey, actually that's really good. So we merge those PRs, and they also feel like they are all part of the process or part of the community, and they come back again with more PRs and more ideas. In a way, they also help. The developers who are using your SDK are also helping you define the future of the product. So yeah, I think this is a bit of synergy there. But I would always go back to having really good docs, having good examples. If you can even make videos, live coding sessions, speaking at events like this, I think they're really helpful for the community.
Awesome. Same thing, Tim. Actually, as head of marketing, how do you see this onboarding process on your side, managed on your side with documentation, anything related to that you plan already?
I think documentation is probably, like everyone said, I mean, there's a reason that GitHub is a thing, right? And because or Linux is where it is today, when it's because the community will get involved if you give them the chance, but you need to maybe put some markers out, because The thing I think that gets lost in the process is remembering that what you're working on is a game, and actually you should release it, which is I know it sounds simple enough, but I think, like, I'm just pulling a number out my butt here, but maybe I don't know how many Web3 games have been in development perpetually since they've been announced, because blockchain keeps evolving and Web3 keeps evolving, and all those features now need to be retroactively added. And so in the documentation that we are currently working on is less so, I mean, having the kind of technical know-how how to do things is important, but also having a developer-focused documentation on, hey, here's step 1, 2, 3 to having a great game, like, and how to get it out the door. Because I think it's just as important for when you onboard developers to say, look, having the right tech in place is important, and that's really important for us. So I know we haven't really mentioned it too much because this is a discussion of SDKs, but something I've obviously brought up with you, Flav, is the is Owned, which is the platform we're currently building with, which really it is as simple as it needs to be to get players to find games. That's the general concept, is to help gamers find games. And once they get there through tried and trusted solutions, which is like filtering and making references, or being able to recommend stuff based on what people like, which is preference. Once they get there, they can interact with items directly through the platform. So items that are related to the game. And what happens is that when a developer wants to come on board, the first question is, well, okay, now if we're on the platform, how easy will it be for us to, do we have to go off onto the side, develop more NFTs, more collections, and slowly introduce them into the game? And, we say, well, no, you don't really need to, because we've made it as simple as click, drag, click. And I think the thing about onboarding is twofold then. It's one, it's making sure that developers not just understand the tools, but understand what the goal is, which sounds funny, but it's quite important, because because ultimately your game is always going to be on the back foot on a tech front, because there's always going to be something that's newer and shinier. But if your game is great and fun and enjoyable, there will be a loyal player base, because these are games, right? The technical game is not going to be the most played game. It rarely is. But on the other side, the thing we're working on at the moment in terms of like how do we onboard developers is making the minting of certain assets so simple that, because the developers we're trying to target are developers who don't necessarily need to understand all of the context that goes into the games. And I think the best way to explain that is RPG Maker. I'm sure everyone's familiar with RPG Maker, right? There are a number of really great games that have been made on RPG Maker, and the people who created them, the developers, don't understand the first thing about a lot of the technical elements that go into it. Or they use something like Unity or Unreal Engine, and if you ask them, okay, cool, you made a great game, but could you build your own engine? No, not a chance. It's too complicated. That's not why I'm using this engine. I'm using it to do it for me. So I think for us, having documentation in place and the process of developing onboarding developers, is saying to them that actually we're building it in such a way that if you want to understand the complexities, you're welcome to, but actually it's not always necessary to just make a fun game. Like, I think what we've seen is a lot of developers are getting stuck in the weeds of, we need to make the next the next big thing, the next huge game. And in order to do that, it needs these and these parts. But actually, sometimes the best games are the simplest. And so maybe focus on don't worry so much about everything from the get-go. We will will work with you to understand the complexities as you add them. So I know it sounds counterintuitive to make things maybe more obtuse, keep things like away it's to a certain extent, but that's because what we believe is that developers at the end of the day are people. Not all of them, not every developer is a genius, right? And it's not, it sounds offensive, but that's that. Then not everyone is a technical whiz kid that can tear things down and understand what they're looking at, but they know what a fun game is. And they know what Web3 is because they like Web3. They like trading NFTs. They like getting into tokens. And they want to find a way to put those two things together, but they don't have the technical know-how or desire to want to build it all themselves. And so what we're doing is saying, actually, it's really easy to do. You click a button, it's on chain. Any of the more complicated stuff like the security, we will help you understand if you need to, but we'll take care of it. It's like that's not your problem, that's our problem. And so yeah, that's kind of the way we're doing it. I guess our approach is always, like I said, it's keep it simple, stupid. It's like keep it as simple as you can, make it available for those who need it. But at the end of the day, most users are not power users. They are just trying to make a cool, fun game, and that's what we're trying to provide. So yeah.
Well, actually, that's a perfect segue to my last question for every one of you, because I don't know if you're aware of it. I know some of you are. We released our BGA survey and report based on your feedback, and thank you for that. In order to paint the state of the ecosystem that we have in terms of blockchain gaming, and I would like to ask you this question around what will be the biggest driver of the Web3 gaming ecosystem in 2023, because when we look at the report, the first factors mentioned is game improvements, with 35.7% of respondents sharing that feedback. So starting with you, Alessandro, if you already have an idea of your top factors for 2023 in terms of advancing blockchain gaming.
I haven't seen the final results on that report yet. But speaking for myself,
spoilers.
Yeah, no spoiler. I mean, I like. It doesn't seem to me that there are a tremendous amount of technical barriers anymore. I mean, like there's improvements to be made. There are things to be simplified. I think it's really the number one enabler will be proving to the gaming community that we can produce functionality that helps bring trust to games and advanced kind of synchronicity across games, and these open economies and synced leaderboards and achievement systems and whatever that doesn't feel extractive and that won't scam them of their money, and things that feel natural and authentic to the gaming community. That's going to be the biggest enabler. It's not like technically we've figured out a lot of it. I mean, while it's that stuff, there's a lot to be desired there in terms of making sure folks have that and know what they're doing with it. But I really think it's just doing the work of reaching out to the gaming community and modeling these tools around existing monetization strategies or new ones that feel less exploitative. Or maybe if it's not exploitation, then like just less like kludgy and unfun, or like, and just really say, hey, we just want to give you a cool token that you can take anywhere that shows that you achieved something. Like that's not very controversial, and it shows people, okay, maybe this is something I would like to see in my other game. Let the users define how they want to see a metaverse evolve from the blockchain rather than forcing it and trying to extract money from it straight up.
Okay, awesome. Because I like to change the order. Tim, what do you think? What will be the main driver according to you?
I mean, I agree with Alessandro that like the thing is, I mean, the tech is in a great place. It could always be better, but so can everything. I think at the end of the day, if the game isn't good, it doesn't matter like how smart your economy is. It's a dead game. And there's a reason that, and I'll use two examples. Is if you can think most MMOs, and I'm not talking Web3, I'm talking Web2 MMOs, are still trying to replicate World of Warcraft today. And that's because it was a great model, but actually it's not as easy as it is. Like, how many MMOs do you know have survived for very long, right? And I think the secret to success, so some of the most successful MMOs, is do something different. Don't do the same thing. Guild Wars 2, for example, and Final Fantasy 14, great MMOs, they don't copy the formula exactly. And I think one of the things that I think will help Web3 get to a great place is actually break the system and the rules. And so what I mean is, there are Web3 developers still trying to chase the highs of Axie Infinity. Don't do that, okay? For one, it's not actually a sustainable model, because games in that game, because the way and when I say that sustainable, I mean if it comes down to grind, eventually when it comes to my game, you play my game because you earn more. The moment another game comes that offers more earning, there's no incentive to stay in your game, right? Because the gameplay wasn't the thing that kept them there. It's earning money. So they're gone. And so what I think should happen is Web3 games should break the rules and do something completely different. Make games they want to make. And so a quick example of that is two things. We have told a couple of our partners and projects we've dabbled with are, hey, if you're going to use tradable items like NFTs, other LFTs in your game, don't limit them based on rarity or artificially limit them in whatsoever. Limit them based on difficulty. So when a person has an item, it means they got it because they worked their ass off to get it, not because a developer deemed there should only be 5 of them. And if you think about it, Valve kind of accidentally invented Web3 games like 10 years ago with Dota and Counter-Strike, because you can trade items with others. It's just in their ecosystem, right? That's the main variable. And so you can create a game like that on blockchain, right? You can say everything is still hosted on a server that's close to home, AWS, Azure, whatever you want. The gameplay, the logic is as close as possible to a person's house for the minimum amount of latency, because that's important. And then you make items tradable through the blockchain, just the items. Now what you've done is you've taken Smart or Dota or League of Legends or whatever and moved it to the blockchain. And the only difference between them is one is Web3 and one isn't. Gameplay-wise, they're the same. And I know that sounds easy, but like, how many Web3 games are trying to do that? They're also trying to layer in other things, because that's what Axie did, or that's what. Don't do that. Just try something different. Make what you think will be great. And I think that's what's going to win out at the end of the day, because I'll close on this thought, and the thing that's kind of led everything I do in the Web3 game space. I've asked my friends many times why they don't play Web3 games. And I've asked myself why I don't play nearly as many as I could, because I still go back and onto Steam, log on, play the same games I love. And that's because if earning and the ability to earn was a great incentive, I would have studied harder for my exams and become a lawyer and not got into and spent all my time playing Dota at university. Like, get clearly earning and making a buttload of cash isn't my most important incentive in my life. It's not the thing that drives me forward, right? So what makes me want to do something is it's fun, it's challenging, and it tests me or brings me closer to my friends. If a game can do that, then irrespective of if it's Web3 or not, it will be a winner. If it can't do that, then you are on borrowed time, because you're going to have to invest so much money to keep people coming back that you're just going to burn through whatever you have. So yeah, that's what I think is going to help games get ahead.
Wow, awesome! Thanks, Tim. Jonathan, what do you think?
I think it's been really well said. Build great games. If you have a dead game, doesn't matter how fancy your tokenomics are, or how many features and shiny token gated features and airdrops you have. If you have If the incentive is not in creating a really good quality game that I wake up and I feel like I want to play without, you know, having to worry about, oh, did I walk and did I make enough steps to earn enough tokens to, you know, if the incentive of playing the game is not tied to other rewards, and but it's just a really good game, people are going to always want to come back to it. So I think a lot of effort, I personally think, should be focused on that. uh, let's not complicate things that shouldn't be complicated. We have a lot with this we're only at the beginning of this web3 you know, journey. So maybe a lot of things are probably not as serious as we think they are. There's going to be a lot of innovation, a lot of things that are going to change. So, you know, try stuff, experiment, and move forward. If it doesn't work, it fails, just move on, find another thing, or research another way to solve it. So yeah, and maybe for devs, I would encourage, you know, do something open source if you have time. If you find problems that you encounter, try solving them, open source them, write about them, create content about these problems. You know, share within the communities you're in. Share with the companies whose tools you're using, whose SDKs you're using. You know, you know, I think it's really helpful because a lot of teams are also thinking to solve problems, and maybe, just maybe, you have a solution, and maybe you could solve that. That could be maybe a product for you, or it could also be somewhere you can contribute to another project. I think we're at a very, very early phase, and right now I think the objective is to drive the ecosystem forward in improving the quality of the products we create, the tools that we create, and improving the developer experience. So yeah, those are my thoughts.
Awesome. And actually, more than giving your opinion on drivers of the industry for this year, you're giving advice. So thanks for the three of you for that, for your times. Please, after that, give me all links you would like to share. You would like me to share in the description of this video, around documentation and so on. And again, thanks for your time. And I not for every one of you, but have a good day for some of you. Have a good night for the others. Thanks a lot for your time. See you next time.
Oh, thanks so much. It was great chatting to you guys.
Cheers.
Thank
It
you.
was nice talking to you guys.
Bye bye.
Awesome.
Bye.
See you guys. Bye.